Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into some truly fascinating esoteric writings by Rudolf Steiner. You know, we completely take our independent, calculating minds for granted today, but we're going to explore a critical evolutionary shift, the exact turning point that birthed the human intellect as we know it. And we're going back in time, way back to the twilight of the lost continent of Atlantis.
So have you ever stopped to wonder what humanity actually had to trade away just to gain the power of logical thought? To really wrap our heads around the profound cost of getting a calculating mind, we first have to look at what human beings possessed beforehand and exactly what they had to sacrifice to achieve it. Because let me tell you, it wasn't a free upgrade. It was a monumental cosmic trade-off.
Section 1. The Magic of Ancient Atlantis. Our journey begins in an ancient world that is literally nothing like our own, dominated by early Atlantean subraces like the Toltecs. According to the source texts, this lost continent wasn't just some different landmass. The very atmosphere and biology were completely different. It was enveloped in this dense, watery, bubbling fog. And human beings? They didn't have the hard, rigid skeletons we have today. They possessed soft, cartilaginous, almost fluid physical bodies deeply connected to the watery environment around them. And because they were so deeply connected to nature, these early humans wielded a magical life force extracted from plant seeds known as vril. They could literally manipulate nature. Forget burning coal or electricity, they used vril to make plants grow rapidly and even to propel hovering airships over the misty mountains. They were utilizing the raw, latent energy of life itself.
When it came to building their magnificent cities, they didn't use mathematics, engineering, or logical blueprints. As the source material describes, in complete harmony with nature, they created fabulously beautiful dwellings. And they did this through deep intuition and a shared ancestral memory. Imagine not having to learn how to build a house, but just knowing it instinctively because your ancestors knew it. That shared memory effortlessly guided all of their actions.
Section 2. The Dawn of Logical Thought. But as we hit the last third of the Atlantean epic, a radical shift occurs. We see the emergence of a brand new group, the fifth subrace, esoterically termed the Israelites or primal Semites. They represent the very first announcement of thought and combination. With them, for the very first time in human history, we are seeing the beginnings of logical calculation. The era of purely intuitive, memory-based living was officially starting to end.
We are looking at a massive psychological pivot here. While the Toltecs and earlier groups relied entirely on a vivid, collective memory and a magical harmony with nature to survive, the emerging Israelites took a completely different path. Instead of just relying on vivid mental pictures of the past to guide their actions, they actually began to independently compare experiences. They started calculating. They started combining abstract ideas. It's this profound shift from just having mental pictures to actually having calculating thought.
And this brings us to the birth of something absolutely incredible, the faculty of judgment. Humanity essentially developed a true inner voice. Before this point, humans practically surrendered to every biological instinct and impulse that came their way. But now they gained the ability to reflect, to pause, and to make a conscious choice about whether to approve or reject a desire. Think about it for a second. This is the absolute foundation of what you and I consider free will today. Section 3. The Physiology of the Eye. So how did this massive mental leap actually happen physically? Well, it required a monumental physiological transformation to physically house this new, independent human I or ego. As outlined in the texts, the human being actually consists of multiple subtle bodies. And believe it or not, until this era, human self-consciousness didn't even live fully inside the physical body. It existed mostly outside the physical form as this luminous, protruding etheric cloud around the head. Just imagine a glowing, fiery-colored aura extending way past your physical skull. The texts describe a literal, physical process to change all of this. That protruding etheric head began a gradual pushing into the physical brain. For the very first time, these two bodies began to coincide and interlock, aligning perfectly at a specific center of forces right between the eyebrows. And it was because of this precise physical alignment that the physiological basis to finally say I and perform logical combinations was born. The self was finally rooted inside the individual. But to physically anchor this sharp new logical awareness, the human body had to change drastically. We see this massive hardening process. The previously soft, watery, fluid limbs had to undergo a literal crystallization. As the eye entered the body, the upper limbs and head hardened into solid bone for the very first time.
The physical world was becoming sharp and defined, and the human body had to step up and match it, to become a solid vessel for the intellect.
Section 4. The Great Evolutionary Trade-Off. Now, acquiring this sharp, independent intellect, it came at a tremendous evolutionary cost. Just look at what was lost versus what was gained. That incredible mastery over vril and plant seed power, completely gone. Natural clairvoyance and the ability to just see into the spiritual world evaporated like morning mist, permanently traded for an internal, sharp, physical brain. The external magic was entirely withdrawn in exchange for internal logic.
This dynamic really captures the tragedy and the triumph of this era perfectly. Stripped of their magical vril, they couldn't just will a seed to blossom anymore, or move objects through etheric power. The Israelites had to painstakingly learn physical, mechanical labor. They had to use clumsy, new tools and their physical brains to interact with a world that was suddenly solid, dense, and disconnected from them. This clumsy physical labor was literally the price of admission for becoming a free, independent personality.
Section 5. Manu and the Great Exodus. Recognizing that this primitive dawn of logic was essentially the ultimate seed of modern humanity, a pivotal historical event was set into motion. The setting for this event is Niflheim, which translates to the fog home. This was a heavy atmosphere located near present-day Ireland, and it was incredibly dense with water vapor and bubbling mists, a place where rain didn't even fall yet just because the air was so saturated with water.
Right in the middle of this dense fog, a great sun initiate, known as Manu, looked over the population to make a crucial evolutionary selection. And he made a really fascinating choice. He deliberately bypassed the powerful Atlantean seers, the giants, and the incredible magicians who were still clinging to the old ways. Instead, he chose the simplest individuals. He chose the ones who had absolutely nothing left of the old magic, but who possessed that fragile, brand new spark of independent thinking and logical judgment.
Manu led this small, seemingly simple, but spiritually advanced fraction of humanity on a great exodus. They journeyed eastward, leaving the heavy mists and the sinking lands of Atlantis behind. He guided them all the way to the high, dry deserts of Central Asia, to places like Tibet and the Gobi, setting them up to become the progenitors of a completely new evolutionary epoch, the Aryan root race. Their monumental task in this brand new world was an ongoing process of individuation. They had to bring this newly forged power of logical thought to absolute perfection. They had a covenant to fully separate from the old, comforting group soul of Atlantis so they could become completely independent, self-conscious personalities. They were tasked with building the very foundation of the modern intellectual human being that we are today.
And this brilliant journey leaves us with a pretty profound final thought to reflect upon. As we navigate our hyper-logical, technologically advanced modern world, and as our intellect grows ever sharper by the day, have we entirely forgotten the spiritual connection, that intuitive harmony with nature that we sacrificed so long ago to become who we are today? It is definitely a fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.